North Carolina Supreme Court issued an order earlier this week blocking the certification of a winner in the race for a state Supreme Court seat. The court's Republican majority granted a temporary stay at the request of Republican Appeals Court Judge Jefferson Griffin, who lost to incumbent Supreme Court Justice Allison Riggs by 734 votes. Griffin, backed by the state Republican Party, is contesting the validity of more than 60,000 ballots, claiming ineligible voters participated in the election. North Carolina State Representative Amber Baker joins us right now. And Representative Baker, glad to have you back on the show. So, boy, they still are trying all they can here. A federal judge, Trump appointed, kicked it back to the Supreme Court. And you're like, what the hell? So this guy is claiming that these votes were invalid based upon a federal law?
So it's based on voter registration. And what they've done is gone in and surgically looked for voters based on their registration information that possibly voted for Justice Riggs. And so the claim is that these voters that they're targeting, that their registration was incomplete. Social Security numbers were not completely indicated on the registration forms, and there's some question about their driver's license. Now that's on their registration, but keep in mind with our newly enacted laws around the necessary need for people to show a valid ID, every one of these voters had to show an ID to get their ballots. But he's not claiming that they illegally voted. He's claiming that their vote should be based on them not properly having their registrations form completed. And I have to say, 2 months after the election, we had over 5 million voters to vote. And so what we're saying is that the will of the people should be honored, and that he has lost at multiple levels in this appeals process. And everyone has said that the votes were fairly cast, and he has lost every single one of his appeals based on this crazy claim. So we know that this was a valid election. We know there is no indication that there was any kind of voter fraud. But what we know is that when they lose, they can't go home and sit their tails down. They want to keep fighting, and they want to take things that don't belong to them. And the people of North Carolina are wanting their voices to be heard.
And of course, this is not necessarily a Republican Supreme Court that you can trust.
That is correct. So, as I've told your voters many times on here, one of the justices is the son of our Speaker Pro Tem in the Senate. So remember the last name Berger. They are father and son. We also have Justice Newby, who we know won his seat by defeating Sherry Beasley. And so even before we went to what we currently have as a 6-2 split on the Supreme Court, both Newby and Berger had shown that they were willing to do the bidding of the Republican Party, and nothing has changed. And so we are advocately supporting Justice Riggs in this fight. And I want to say again, it was a valid election. And no one is questioning whether or not she won fairly. He is simply saying that the registrations, their votes should be thrown out based on their registration forms.
Now, this is what we call what it means to be an absolute sore loser. He's had the state election board, others have just dismissed his complaints, but he wants to take it all the way to the top. And I wouldn't be surprised, based upon the North Carolina State Supreme Court ruling, if they rule against him, this fool won't go to the U.S. Supreme Court.
So, it wasn't just the Board of Elections. What your viewers need to also know is that there were 2 lower court decisions that also upheld the original decision of the voters of North Carolina. And so he has continued this process. And, he's well funded. It's not his money. The Republican Party is backing him. And so for those who may wonder, why is this so important? Well, if we are not able to seat Justice Allison Riggs, which she is currently serving, so this would be, she's serving out of an appointment term, and now she has been duly elected to this seat, it will shift our count on our Supreme Court from 6-2 to now 7-1. So it's leaving Justice Earls, who would be the longstanding Democrat on the Supreme Court, and she will be running for re-election in this upcoming election. So it's important for us to continue to support our voters again who came out and voted, and the original win number was a little over 200, but because of canvassing, because of the appeals, because of the multiple hand recounts, that original win number of 200 is now well over 700. So he knows that they have canvassed everything, they have recounted everything, and he lost. And so what do we do when we lose? We should be gracious. We should concede. We should congratulate the duly winner. But we know that the Republicans have shown time and time again that's not what they do. They only do that when they win, no matter how they win. But whenever they lose, then they want to fight and cry like babies, and they want to, use whatever tools they can to get their way. And so, once again, I'm here telling your voters, your viewers, North Carolina is a mess.
Indeed it is. Questions from our panelists. Lauren, you first.
Yeah, so what is the status of the situation right now? The Supreme Court in North Carolina blocked the last ruling, and what happens next? So they will hear his case. Allison Riggs has recused herself, which she didn't have to. They never do when there's a conflict of interest, but she has recused herself because she's being ethical in the sense that she does not want to rule on a case in which she is a part of the case. And so there is a date coming up very soon in which they will hear the case and make the decision on the case. If they don't rule in his favor, I am sure, as Roland has just said, then they'll take it to the Supreme Court, who in the past has kicked it back to the states. So with the maps, they didn't rule on our maps. If you guys remember, they kicked it back to the states to make the decision, which is how we ended up with these really horrible gerrymandered maps after the Supreme Court had just voted to have those maps redrawn just 2 months earlier. So there is precedent that the Supreme Court have in the past kicked state issues regarding the state back to the state Supreme Court to make a decision. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when our state Supreme Court votes on next week or the week after next, and if in fact they will roll the dice and take a chance with a Supreme Court that has already ruled against them in terms of our gerrymandered maps.
Greg.
Thank you, Roland, and good to see you, Dr. Baker. Baker, I was reading Mother Jones' article, Melissa Crome, who works down there in North Carolina, whose daughter is on the list, apparently, of challenged voters, said that this amounts to a nonviolent version of January the 6th, 2021, and I would agree with that. You brought up gerrymandering. I guess I have a couple of questions. One, holding on to this seat, how might that lay the foundation for the election cycle after 2028 and redistricting going forward? And the second question pertaining to what you and Lauren just talked about, should she lose, should she appeal, do you think, to the Supreme Court, particularly given the fact that that is a federal law, at least in part, that is in play here, which probably be the reason they might try to take it in the first place?
Well, let me say this. So the fighter in me said that our Democratic secretary should have went ahead. She should have, the Secretary Marshall should have went ahead and certified her race. That's what I said. And I said, let them sue her. That's what I said. They got plenty of money, make them spend it. I would imagine that she would appeal it. People here are angry. The voters are angry. There are many interest groups that are, fighting and advocating on her behalf. And so in the same ways that they have this war chest that they're backing this fool over, she also has an opportunity to have that same kind of support. And again, the fighter in me would not give up. I would take it all the way to the top. I would never concede. I would do what 45 has done and some of the other crazies that have not conceded when they clearly have lost. She has won. So there is no need for her to concede, and it is everything for her to continue to fight for a seat that she duly won. That's what I would say. We would be talking about two different things. On the same subject today had our state secretary, Marshall, went ahead and validated her race. And the crazy thing is that we just got sworn in on yesterday, and it was felt, as they read the document indicating that all of our races had been certified. And many of us felt the absence and the pain in the room that, again, over 5 million voters, a win of 700 plus votes, and yet she could not be certified. She could not be sworn in, and she can't currently sit with who have been her previous colleagues in a race that she duly won.
Reese.
I'm curious to know if the kind of analysis that the Republicans did in terms of targeting the Democratic registration was also done on Republican registrations.
It was not. And so that has been some of the sidebar conversations that we said today. Again, first of all, Reese, let me tell you something. I follow you on Instagram, and because I'm all cleaned up now, I don't use anymore. But sis, I'm like, oh, God, just give me permission. But okay, I digress for a minute.
Thank you.
Again, I'm going to say this. I'm probably not a typical Democrat in a sense that my background is out of social justice. My background is out of fighting for what's right. As a person who has come through the desegregation of the Jefferson County public school systems and dealing with the Klan up close and personal, having an aunt that was a Panther, I say we need to stop dealing with them as if they're going to play by the rules that have been set, because they have repeatedly shown us that they are not, do not, will not, and don't care. So at this point, as Democrats, we need to stop trying to take the high ground and begin to fight. And I do believe that the voters that support us would support that, because it's very frustrating. I hear it all the time that we continue to take the high ground and they continue to just take ground. And so I would hope, I'm not a part of her strategy team, but I would hope that there would be some talk about doing exactly what they've done, being strategic and going in and looking at Republican voters while also building a strategy for taking this to the Supreme Court.
All right, then. Well, look, we're going to be watching what happens in North Carolina. And when Greg talked about redistricting beyond 28, no, the focus for Dems really should be first, winning this seat, keeping this seat with Allison Riggs, winning Anita Earl's seat next year in 2026. And there are 3 Republican seats that are up in 2028. And the goal in North Carolina for the state Democratic Party, for the national Democratic Party, for progressives, for independents, and definitely for black folks, is to completely take down Republicans in that state, because now they've broken their supermajority in the legislature. The reality is, here's the other piece, which is critically important. If Democrats take back control of the Supreme Court, they can actually rule against partisan partisan gerrymandering. When they had the majority before they did so, North Carolina had a 10-3 Republican majority because of political gerrymandering. When the Democrats took control of the Supreme Court, it was 7-7. The reason Republicans control the House right now is because of those 4 seats in North Carolina. And so that's how important this is. And to Greg's point, redistricting is going to be important in 2030 because, and I said this yesterday when I talked to Martin O'Malley, and Democrats have to be thinking long term, and black people have better be thinking long term. Because of population shifts, North California, New York State, Wisconsin, potentially Michigan, maybe New York State are going to lose congressional seats. That's electoral colleges. It's estimated that blue states will lose 12 electoral college votes that will go to red states, which means that if Democrats want to win the presidency, they have to win Arizona and Nevada every 4 years, or they have to turn North Carolina into a blue state because of their 16 electoral college votes. And so there's a whole lot riding on this. And so you defend and protect Riggs. You defend and protect Anita Earls next year, a black woman. And then, of course, you go all out and you lock and load to try to beat those 3 Republicans in 2028. If that happens, Democrats have a majority on the state Supreme Court, and you can see more favorable voting rights rulings than we've seen in the past. And so that's what we certainly want to see happen there in North Carolina.
And we, Roland, we were very aggressive this year, and I think we continue along the path of what we started with this election. And indeed, we have already started campaigning for 2026, and we're going to continue to build out our strategies in our black communities. And I have to say, I can't give you an exact count because, again, we just got sworn in yesterday. But here's a little Tahiti. When I walked into the caucus, I looked around and I said, where are the white people? We are now almost 51% of the House Democratic Party. And many of those seats were won down east, where we were very aggressive about campaigning and making sure that the people down east have votes. And so the next time I'll actually give you guys the count. We have between 12 and 15 black males that are now serving with us. And so with that, we as a caucus are going to have to be aggressive about making sure that we're pushing our agenda. And so my hope is that in my 3rd term, I'll get an opportunity to actually help shape and move some of those conversations forward.
Be sure to let your majority leader know. We've been trying to get him on the show, so we'd love to have him come on and talk about that agenda and that strategy in North Carolina. So Representative Baker, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
Folks.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.